I started thinking, oh my God, if I die, he's going to be homeless. No one's going to step up and help him. So that's kind of like how the journey kind of started a little bit. And I eventually picked myself up and went back to school and got a second master's in autism so I could advocate for him. And then slowly started living and learning.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate, here. This is the place to find inspiring stories of world-changing women and girls every single week. We have a new unique story coming your way every single week, so make sure that you subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. One Girl Revolution is a nonprofit multimedia organization that is dedicated to elevating the voices and stories of world-changing women and girls. You can find all of our podcast episodes, watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series, donate to our nonprofit organization to help us continue our critical work to elevate women's voices and their stories, and so much more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. This week on the One Girl Revolution podcast, I welcome Rachelle Vartanian, founder of the Living and Learning Center. I have been hearing about this amazing woman for what feels like years, and I'm so thrilled to finally have the opportunity to sit down with her and share her incredible story and to talk about her incredible work with the Living and Learning Center. Rachelle graduated with a bachelor's degree in teaching for the emotionally impaired. Rachelle graduated with a bachelor's degree in teaching for the emotionally impaired. Right out of college, she worked at a lockup center for adjudicated youth. She was really passionate about this work and ended up working with this population for 10 years. During this time, she went back to school and obtained a master's degree in educational psychology with a concentration in personality and development. She did this to better understand why so many of her students chose to behave in self-destructive manners. It was also during this time that Rachelle was seeing signs of autism in her youngest son. When he was officially diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, she made the decision to go back to school and get a second master's degree in Autism Spectrum Disorders. It was also during this time that she began teaching at the high school level in special education. Looking for social skills groups that would benefit her son brought her to the realization that they were few and far between. The ones that were available cost a lot of money and had her driving 45 minutes each way. Rachelle took it upon herself to start a local group. Every Sunday, she facilitated a group of like-minded individuals for almost 2 years. Then she took a leap of faith and quit her job, sold her family home, downsized her life, and drew money from her retirement, and the Living and Learning Center was born. The Living and Learning Center is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based here in Michigan whose mission is to enhance the lives of their participants with disabilities. Through therapeutic, social, work-based, and community engagement, they seek to support, enrich, inspire, and embolden their participants and their families so they can achieve their goals. Living and Learning Enrichment Center's vision is to become the nation's model in supporting the highest quality of life for people with disabilities and their families. And as you'll hear in this episode, they are well on their way. Rachelle shares her inspiring story and talks all about the incredible work that she is doing through the Living and Learning Center in this episode. You do not want to miss this one. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Rachelle. Rachelle, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you on. I feel like I've heard so many stories about you and the great work that you're doing with the Living and Learning Center. And so I feel like this is a long time coming, and I can't wait to hear all about your own story and all about the great work that you're doing. But before we get into the Living and Learning Center and everything you have going on there, I would love to hear a little bit about your own story. So could you share a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and just your life before the Living and Learning Center?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Livonia, Michigan, almost my entire life. It wasn't until I started living and learning that I even moved out of Livonia. I've got 2 sisters. My parents, they were divorced when I was younger. It was a little bit of a tumultuous divorce. But it's funny how things that happen in your life make you who you are, even the bad stuff. So I really feel like, looking back, I can understand now why certain things had to happen for me to be doing what I'm doing now. I got married to the love of my life. We had 2 children. my youngest son has autism. We ended up getting divorced. I remarried. I adopted one of my sons. I was a teacher for 20 years in Farmington, special education teacher. So I adopted one of my students, and now I have a stepson too. So I have 4 boys.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a amazing story of so many. I'm sure there are so many stories about the difficulties, the joys of all of your sons too.
Oh yeah, it's definitely. And they were all, affected different ways by my son's autism, and it also made them better people too. Now that they're older, we talk about this all the time. That my one son went to Catholic Central. My one son that's neurotypical, and he says it all the time that, Mom, it was looking back, it was such a white school and all boys and privileged kids. And here I'm living this life where, we don't have a lot of money, and my Black brother's living with me, and my brother that has autism living with me. It's like, they have no idea what diversity is.
It's so interesting to me. And even just as a side note for you and anybody who listens to this podcast knows that I have a brother with autism, and
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah, so he's a year older than me. And when we were younger, people would think we were twins almost, because we were Irish twins, born
Yeah.
a year apart, and they didn't know what was wrong with him. He was brilliant. When he was in 2nd grade, but just had some differences, and teachers couldn't figure it out, and they wanted to hold him back in school. And my mom was this powerhouse, a woman before her time. And she was like, well, he's acing all of his tests. He's not turning in his homework because he's like it doesn't make sense to him. So he's not, all these like little intricacies.
Yeah.
And then in 2nd grade, they ended up identifying that he was on the spectrum.
Wow.
And he talks about that he's now a professor at Clemson. So he's an
Oh my gosh,
incredible
I love
story.
this.
Yeah. And he talks about how he wouldn't be there if it wasn't for having 3 sisters, because we were the types of girls that it was like, Peter, pay attention to me, eye contact, look at me, we would unplug his Nintendo if he was zoned into his Nintendo, which was frustrating, I'm sure, for him. But he learned so many skills, having sisters and having really close in age siblings, but also we've learned so much from that, and just compassion and understanding. And it's so important for children to get to know, just to understand that all of us have differences, right? Like none of us are typical, really. Like at the end of the day, we all have something that we have to deal with.
Can I ask you, is he married now? Is he?
He is, yeah.
Just love hearing this. Okay.
Yeah, yes, he's an incredible story, and has obviously, there are a lot of things that he's had to work through and learn in different ways. But yeah, he's an incredible story. So I'll have to tell you more offline, because I think that it would be a really interesting story for you just to know about with
Oh my
the
gosh,
great work
yes.
that you're doing.
I would
So
love it. Thank you.
I would love to hear, I guess, about the story about how you found out that your son had autism. How did they diagnose that, and what was that kind of experience like for you?
Yeah. So, he's my youngest, and I just knew that some things were a little different. He was a little quirky, and he would line things up, and very sensitive to sound. And, if we were in a public bathroom, we'd flush the toilet, and he'd be, and it looked like it was literally painful for him. He would just be, if we were walking down the street and a motorcycle was driving by again, he would just, and he had little meltdowns. When he ran, he would, flap. And there were things that and I didn't know autism. I just knew that something was different. And then one day his preschool teacher said, I think he has Asperger syndrome. I'd never heard the word. And here I'm a special ed teacher. I had a master's in psychology, and I'm thinking, what Asperger's? What is that? Is that what your brother has, by the way, Asperger's? Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm researching this, and, it's one of those things when you start reading it, if the doctor says to you, oh, you've got, and you go down that whole Google search of every single thing that, could be possibly wrong with you, the stories weren't good that I was hearing. But the one thing is that at the time he was diagnosed, I was working at a school with kids that were incarcerated. So it was a juvenile detention center. I'd worked there for 10 years. So this was like my 10th year there. And I was moving to a high school, working with the same population though. And what was going on, and always say this, it was like the perfect storm where I was getting a divorce, my son was just diagnosed, and now I'm in this, the following year, I'm in this school, this high school with kids with severe behavioral issues. And they didn't know what to do with the kids with like a higher functioning autism. So they're putting them in my room. So all I kept thinking is, oh my, he'll never survive this. And it was so inappropriate for them to, our kids are walking targets to be bullied, quirky. And I just kept looking at this whole thing. And I, to be totally honest, I went into a depression, with, besides the divorce and, my son being diagnosed. And then the other piece was my family sadly was not comfortable with him. And we come from an Italian family too. So we're used to, Sunday dinners and I could just see it, that they were just kind of pushing us away and not including us in things. I was heartbroken. So in my head, I started thinking, oh my God, if I die, he's going to be homeless. No one's going to step up and help him. So that's kind of like how the journey kind of started a little bit. And I eventually picked myself up and went back to school and got a second master's in autism so I could advocate for him. And then slowly started living and learning.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And I think it's important for so many people nowadays to hear about, because even like when my brother was diagnosed, there was nothing, like we didn't even have Google then, so my mom's kind of piecing things together. And now, thankfully, we know so much more about autism and Asperger's and so many other things too, right? Like,
Right.
We've made so many discoveries, and our culture, our world is able to help everyone. There are not enough resources and there are not enough people that help, of course, but we know so much more, and making sure that those systems are in place. And even with your son, it's like, we need things like what you're doing with the Living and Learning Center, because we need outlets for these kids to go and just be treated like normal human beings. And my brother's experience was very similar to some of the ones that you shared about in your class, where they didn't know what to do with him. So they were like, oh, we'll just put him in special ed. Meanwhile, he is, acing all of his exams and doesn't even have to study. I remember in college, my brother, I would call him and be like, hey, Peter, I'm cramming for this test, da, 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 da. Tell me everything you know about whatever war or something in history. Cause you could tell him any year in history and he would tell you what battle was fought, who won, all these things. And he was so confused when I would call him and he'd be like, but didn't you listen? Like, didn't you listen in class? Like, why are you studying? Why are you cramming? You should know this already.
Right.
But that kind of mindset, he just was brilliant. And that's what you're getting with so many of these children. They don't just fit into the quote unquote special needs box. You don't just put all these different kids into one class because you don't know what to do with them. And so we could do a whole podcast about that too. But I want to talk about the incredible work that you're doing with the Living and Learning Center, because it's so important. So I know that you said it was kind of a process to start it, but was there a spark moment or something that happened that you were like, this is what I need to do. I need to start something to help my son and help other children like him? Yeah,
I just kept looking at these families and, their kids would graduate or get done with school or go into a transition program, and the state of Michigan will pay for your child to go to school till he's 26. And all of them would be saying to me, it's like we fell off a cliff. Once he was done with school, there was nothing. So this was all going through my head. And, again, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I'm going to have to outlive him. I mean, I've got to make sure that he's okay. And I didn't know exactly what to do. I knew something needed to be done. I'd go anywhere I'd hear of a program. I'd go visit. I'd go to out of state to go visit programs, and nothing was really great, I didn't think. And then the alternative was like, this is what's going to happen. He's going to live in my basement and not have a life. So I made a big leap of faith and I quit my job. And at that point I was teaching for 20 years. And I felt like if I was going to do something, I had to be 100% in it. To do it on the weekends or something was not going to get the job done. So like I said, I quit my job, and I had a beautiful home that my ex-husband and I had built, and I sold it, and I moved us into a very humble home. And it was, I mean, I was so ashamed to be living there, and I had big moments of, how could I have did this to my own kids, move them into this home? But it allowed me to take that money from my other home and open the doors to living and learning. And I always, it's fun, it's funny, but we moved out, and a couple years later they bulldozed that home down, and it was bad. But now it's a great story. It worked, thank God. But I opened the doors October 2015 with one program. I called it Friday Night Hangout. I wanted a place for them to go. And just every Friday, this is where I go. I go to the hangout, and I've got friends there, and I had all this beautiful furniture from my home that I sold. So I decorated this little storefront beautifully, and we played games and listened to music and ate pizza, and we danced, and we were in downtown Northville, so we could walk to everything. And I would just embed like social skills in it as I did it, and it grew. And I edited a Saturday night, and then my whole vision, though, the entire time was independent living, or whatever that was going to be for that person. And I did not know how I was going to do it, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking none of them are working. So whatever this is going to be at the end, I've got to help them working. So I just started job skills programs with them. And, I couldn't afford to hire anyone then. So it was me going to these different job sites and giving them job skills. And then keep adding more programs, and we outgrew that center. We moved to another location, and so this is about 3 years later, and it was like all of a sudden the world heard about us, and people were coming from everywhere. And in 3 months we had to move again. We were in the situation where, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to move. And I had a couple of big miracles happen. One was that we were in a meeting, and someone said, well, the Don Massey Cadillac estate is for sale. And if you're from the Northville, Novi area, everyone knew what that house was. It was an estate. It was a mansion on 14 acres. Um, and we all laughed and said, yeah, wouldn't that be great? $3.5 million. But one day I was driving by, and I thought, I'm just going to make an appointment with the realtor and walk that property. And it's funny because I got there before everyone else, and I was standing on the porch waiting for the realtor, and I just had this moment, and it sounds crazy, but I'm standing on the porch and I'm looking across the street, and it was like the sun was on me. It was shining on me. And I had this moment of, oh my God, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to help people live across the street in those apartments. And this is home base, living and learning. All of my programs will be here, and everything is walkable here. There's a downtown. And so when we left that day, I at that point had two people working for me, and I said, I'm in, whatever we have to do to get this done. So I just went to any Kiwanis Club, Rotary Club, churches, anyone, anywhere that I could tell my story and what I was trying to do. And someone read about me and said, actually saw me. We were on a little news station, and he asked to meet me. And after getting to know him, after about a year, I asked him if he'd walk the property with me, and I was explaining I'm going to have alpacas here and chickens there, and there's going to be lavender, and we're going to have a farmer's market, and across the street are the apartments, just explaining everything we're going to do. And we got halfway through, and he said, Rachelle, this has to happen. I'm going to give you $500,000, which was, oh my God. I still had to raise another 800,000. And we did, and we got the keys January 2020, and COVID happened in March. We got through that. And now that first little storefront we were in is now a store. It's an artisan market that we've created called Mod Market, and 50% of the art in there is made by people with special needs, and they get the same percentage as any artist whose work sells. It's also a job training site. And then that second location we were in is where we do all of our therapy. And then our location is where we do all of our vocational work, and our summer camps and our parent support groups. And it's where our offices are. And it's beautiful. We have alpacas and chickens and bunnies and lavender, and it's incredible. And then I had another God moment where I was giving a presentation. At the end, this man came up to me and said, I used to be an executive at Cisco Networking, and he explained that there was this program there that at the end of 6 months, it was very aggressive, but people were getting certificates in cybersecurity, and it was life-changing jobs. So working with him for about a year, we created this program with him, and I rented a room at a Madonna University, so people were on a college campus, and we started this, and now we're on our 5th cohort. Last year's graduating class, every one of them that graduated has a paying job at Comerica or Plant Moran or Ford Motor Company, and they're life-changing jobs. So just, it's been this amazing like snowball. But the best thing out of everything is we have 5 people living in those apartments right now, and my son's one of them. So that is, out of everything, I even getting the keys to this estate, I mean, that is what I was working towards. So
what an incredible story, Rachelle. And I think it's so important for all of us to hear stories like this, because I'm sure that when you started it, you never had any idea that it would be as big, or you'd have to work as hard as you worked, even raising all the money to get the house and really build out this programming. And that's kind of all of us. Sometimes we have an idea, or we see a need and we have an idea for how we can serve that need, but it's too scary. Or like, I don't know how to
Sure.
start a nonprofit. I don't know how to do that. And I'm sure when you started, it's kind of good that you didn't see the bigger
So glad I
vision.
didn't know how
Yeah.
it was going to
Because,
be.
and all
Yeah.
the work, but it's incredible how it's just continued to build, and you've gone over so many hurdles. I mean, even talking about like getting the keys to the property in January 2020, and then COVID hitting, and all of us trying to scramble to figure out how to live in this new world. But now, we've come through so much of that, and now you're able to really have the fuller vision of living and learning. And I'm sure it's going to just continue to grow and evolve.
Donate to One Girl Revolution's nonprofit organization to help us continue our work, highlighting inspiring women and girls that are changing the world through their lives, promoting their work and their organizations, and building a powerful and positive force out in the world, dedicated to empowering women, their voices, and their stories. Donate at onegirlrevolution.com/donate. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com/donate.
For people that are listening, I know you shared about like the different facets of Living and Learning Center, but I would love for you to just kind of share again, so it really can drill into people's minds. What is the Living and Learning Center? And tell me about all the different programs and work that you do.
Okay. We work with teens and adults that have special needs. So when I started, we're working with adults that have autism, and then it slowly transformed into autism and related challenges. And then it's just morphed into, we work with everyone. You don't even have to have a disability. I mean, because we get a lot of adults now that weren't back then diagnosed. So it doesn't matter. We work with everyone. Except for we're not working with people that have mental health issues as far as severe, because we just don't have the background in it. But we do a lot of vocational. I mean, that's our biggest thing right now. It's so crazy. The last number I heard is that we have people coming from 9 different counties, 72 different cities to the programs, which just tells you that there's not enough out there. And we have a waiting list of over 100 people, which makes me so frustrated. Because there shouldn't be waiting lists. And I know these parents, especially the ones that are listening right now, listening to this, is, there's this window of opportunity as a parent that you feel like that's slowly closing. And to know that you're on this waiting list, that's my goal right now, is trying to work on this and trying to create more of our center so that, we can alleviate that waiting list. But we've got art programs and music programs, and I really focused on their special interests. So I don't know if your brother had a special interest, but a lot of our people do. So we have Dungeons and Dragon clubs, and we have gamers clubs, and we had a bird watching club. We have Comic-Con clubs. I really tried to focus on their special interests. And then, like I said, our IT Academy, we have summer camps, we have parent support groups. I really felt like when I was, especially in the beginning, you're just going to doctor's appointments constantly, and OT appointments and physical therapy and speech, and you'd be in this waiting room, and I just would bond with these other parents, and you'd see them every 10, every Wednesday, I'm here at 10 a.m. and so's this parent, and you would just start talking. And it became this resource. So like, oh, you're going to see what doctor? I didn't hear about that doctor. Oh, there's this person that works with people with autism, you know, that are chiropractors. You know, we just got so much from each other. So that's my parent support group is what I wanted that to be. And what we try to do now is bring speakers in. So if a parent says, I'm really interested in independent living, I bring as many different things I know of, people doing anything to talk to our parents. And then, you know, it's the whole just being together to having your own little group of people that understand what you're going through, because, you know, families can want to help and be there, but they're not living it, you know, and they don't get how intense this can be and how isolating and scary and you know, just the judgment you feel constantly, especially if your child like mine looks fine. My son presents well. But we would go somewhere, and even now a little bit, you know, and he says things that are sometimes could be off-putting to other people, you know, very brutally honest, you know, no filter. Um, so, you know, sometimes people are looking at this and not realizing, well, they have autism and, you know, this is what this is, or huge sensory issues. And this is why he's, you know, there, I used to always say, like, my son would wear shorts in the winter, and I would be thinking, oh my God, they're going to call Child Protective Services on me. But like, he had sensory issues and he could not stand wearing long pants. He can wear them now, but he still can't wear sweaters or sweatsuits, or long sleeves. He's always in short sleeves, which, you know, I guess then I'm going off in a circle about this, but I really personally try not to judge other people. It's just like, you don't know what's going on in someone else's life.
It's an important thing for us to think about, because I think even in my own experience with my brother, I was laughing as you were sharing, because I'm like having flashbacks to different things with my own brother, and like trying to explain things to people and get them to understand where he's coming from. And it's just been such a great learning experience for me to see other people just as human beings. Like, we don't know what they're going through. We don't know about their sensory issues. You know, sometimes being somewhere and even seeing a kid have a breakdown in the middle of a store or in church or wherever. And so quickly we jump to like, okay, get your kid together, like whatever,
Exactly.
like take your kid outside. And it's like, we don't know actually what's going on. Like, maybe the kid does have sensory issues, or even like at the movie theater. I know so many movie theaters now are taking into account children and other individuals with differences, and having these showings where it's, you know, like lower the sound and do different things that makes it like less kind of in your face and like loud and crazy. And we need to have that understanding for what other people may be going through. And even if we don't understand, being able to ask the questions and just come to an understanding is so important. And two things I just wanted to say about what you said before is knowledge is power. So it's so important for parents to know and be surrounded by other people that have tried things, trial and error sometimes, you know, where it's like, okay, I tried this, or I know of this doctor, but having that knowledge, but also community. Community is so important for all of us. But for individuals with differences, being surrounded by people that may not be exactly like them, because none of us are the same. All of us are as unique as our fingerprint, but having other individuals, maybe in their age demographic, that are going through similar things that they can relate to or share. But then also for the families to have other families that are like, hey, I'm going through the same thing, or I tried this, or this worked with my kid. Maybe this will work with you. Community is so important.
I agree. And that's one of the great things about this property we're on. It's like Camelot. I mean, I can't even, it's so beautiful. It just needs to be shared by everyone. And so we keep the gates open every day. And we want people, you don't have to call or make an appointment. Just park your car and walk the property. We have a path that goes all the way around the property. So if you're in a wheelchair or something, you know, it's accessible, and it's about a half mile. But you know, I see families in there. We have a little putt-putt course, a 4-hole putt-putt course. I mean, it's so beautiful. So we want families, you know, to have picnics there. I see people bringing their kids there and flying kites or playing, you know, baseball with their kids, you know, throwing balls. And that's exactly what I wanted. And that also makes it inclusive. So we're not on this island of special needs people, you know. So, you know, if I can, you know, share that with people, you know, even though we worked really hard to get it, it was a gift. I mean, whether you want to say a gift from God, or, which I do, um, and I need to share it with other people. So, please, if someone's listening, it's like, I don't know what to do, where to go with my kid. They're always having meltdowns. And I mean, it's non-judgmental. So feel free anytime to come and use the property.
That I can't wait to come and check it out, because I've heard from so many people. They're like, you have to go. It's so amazing. It's so magical. So I can't wait to come and visit you and see the amazing space. I'm curious to hear from you, Rachelle. Is there a story or two? I'm sure that there are so many stories that you could share, and you could write books and books and books about all of the people that have come through living and learning. But is there a story or two of people who have been served through your work that you really feel like embody the power of what you're doing at the Living and Learning Center?
Yeah, you're right. There's quite a few. One of them though, a lot of times if I'm giving a presentation, afterwards someone will come up to me and say, I think my nephew or my son, I think might be on the spectrum, and that's what happened. This man came up to me and said, my son's never been diagnosed with anything, and he is in community college, but we all know that there's something a little different about him. But the other day I was driving and he looked at me and said, Dad, can a person die of loneliness? And I know I just can't even imagine, because at that point he hadn't heard of living and learning. And I always think about that. Like, what could he have said? There's nothing that he's aware of that's going to help his future. And so he's telling me this. And so I said, I want to meet him. And long story short, we did get him in the program and everything. He started coming to our hangouts and he met a girl. And this is the best. We have a downtown in Northville, and I'll see them holding hands. He met a girl at our program. And I'll see them holding hands going into, Great Harvest or something. And I just think, oh my God, I'm just so happy I could be a small part of that, to help him change his life, and have a love. I mean, we all need, these are things we all are deserving of. So there's that one. And then going totally a different route. We have someone that actually, it's a friend of my son's, and he was washing dishes. That was his job, and he very smart. The other thing about our IT Academy is that we've made it so it's small classes, and we just, we took that curriculum and we stretched it to 9 months. And I should have said that piece. So we just slowed it down, and put an amazing teacher in it, someone that is sensitive to their needs and is passionate about their success. And so he went through the program, and he's now got a job. He was offered a job at Comerica, and he's making really good. My last podcast I did, I said how much, and then I was told you can't say how much he's making, but he's doing great. So it's just life changing. So those are just a couple. Another good one, I could go on. A couple. Other one is, one day I got this phone call from someone saying my sister lives in India with her daughter and her husband, and she's on the spectrum, and would you be willing to talk to her? So I'm Skyping this woman who lives in India and talking to her, and she must have liked what I said, because she came to visit, and now her daughter's one of the people living in the apartments across the street, and we got her a job, and she's working full time, and she takes art classes from us. So that is, to me, unbelievable that someone from India heard about us and they moved here and they're, benefiting from it. So it just makes me feel so good.
What the work that you're doing is so unique. Like we said before, there are not enough resources out there. There are not enough things like what you're doing. And so that's incredible that people are hearing about it. And I'm sure they hear about it in all different types of ways. Sometimes it's word of mouth, or sometimes it's situations like that, where people call and just are like, hey, I heard about what you're doing. I want to get involved in the work that you're doing. And I really can't wait to see where you go from here. So
my dream is to buy those apartments. So that's where I'm focused. It's got to be, every parent who has a child with a special need goes to bed thinking the same thing at night. What's going to happen when I die? It's not unique to me. Every parent is thinking this, and we don't want to put it on our other kids, to solve that problem. And then what if that child outlives those children? So this is something that's got to be fixed. So that's my vision right now, is to buy those apartments and to make it almost like I envision it like senior citizens who live in Florida and those communities that they have. That's what I want. And Northville has been amazing. I had no idea what it was going to be like moving there, moving my business there, but they have just, the first time we got the keys or I got the keys to that little storefront, I remember that week hearing on the news that Northville was voted the snobbiest city in Michigan. And I was, oh my God, this is where I'm, but I had one of my students come and visit me, and it was just him and I took him to lunch, and he had a meltdown. He's a big kid, and I'm holding his hands and just letting this play out and letting him calm down. And then I kind of looked around and said, I'm so sorry. And it was this collective, oh my God, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I swear in that moment, I felt like, okay, I found my people. This is where we're supposed to be. And that's the piece. It's like, families need to be able to go places and know that, you just don't know when it's going to happen, when someone's going to have a meltdown, and that it's going to be okay if my person does have a meltdown, that, people are going to be tolerant and not judgmental. And that's what I have found in Northville. They've been amazing.
Shout out to Northville. I did laugh when you said about it being the snobbiest city in Detroit.
Yeah.
But it's true. We have to find the community where it's going to be supportive of our ideas and things that are going on. And that's just really great to hear about the community. And for people that are listening that aren't from Michigan or don't know, Northville is such a beautiful downtown area. And like you talked about, so many cute restaurants and shops. And I just couldn't think of a more prime location for the work that you're doing.
Yeah. And who would have known? I mean, I lived in Livonia. Northville's not that far away from it, but for whatever reason, I never really went to Northville. So it's been incredible. And even the leaders there just stepping up and hearing what we're doing and trying to work with us on transportation, or, maybe you should meet this person. I mean, everyone has been just incredible. I always say that I feel like I was pushing this rock up this hill by myself for years. And then I got to the top and people started coming around saying, let me help you push this down. The putt-putt course I'm talking about that we have in our, on our property, it was a company called Imagine Design and Landscape. They came and saw me and said, listen, we want to put this here. They did it for free. They just built this putt-putt course in 2 weeks. It is beautiful. And, it's been things like that, people coming in and just saying, this is my expertise. How can I help you?
We can all do something. And that's a big talking point on this podcast, is we all have gifts and talents. Sometimes people don't have time, or, but they have money, or they have money and they don't have time, or whatever the thing is. But I love stories like that, where it's, even if you have a company that you can provide something like that, or if you have a skill set that you could go and teach a class and volunteer, what can people do to support your work? I know that there are a lot of ways that people can support the great work that you're doing. What can people do to support your work and get involved in everything that you're doing?
Thank you for asking. Well, definitely what you just said, if they have a skill set and something, to call us. I mean, there's always something we need. There's 6 buildings on that property. So whether it's, and they're old buildings, the one building's been there for 100 years. So we always need something done. So there's that piece, but it's money. And I hate saying that, but that has been the barrier of everything. I want to do those apartments. It's going to take money to do. And the other thing, we're growing so fast that the donations I was able to get in the beginning aren't able to keep up with our growth. Like I said, we have a 100-person waiting list, and not for every program, but our vocational program, our work skills program. And it's because I don't have the space. So, it always comes down to that. So if you are someone that, has the means, or someone that has the means, please reach out to us. We're big on whatever it is that, if you've got a special interest and all I want to do is my money to go here, we will honor that. We have naming rights. And that's, a lot of people have liked that too, putting their names on different buildings. But we've also had companies just come out and volunteer their time for the day to rake leaves. And so we'll take anything to get involved in programs that we have or events we have. We've got an event page on our website. We've got a volunteer section. We have a wish list. So we have people every now and then going on our wish list and sending us, toilet paper and paper towels. Just every bit helps.
Watch In Tandem on One Girl Revolution's website or on our YouTube page. In Tandem is the inspiring story of Caitlin Cullen and her restaurant in Milwaukee, The Tandem. The Tandem does more than just serve food. The Tandem is a family, a community of support for everyone. The Tandem hires people that often no one else will hire, gives them an opportunity, trains them, and helps them find their way in this world. The Tandem is a support system for everyone who walks through their doors. But when COVID hit in March 2020, the Tandem story became even more inspiring. The Tandem closed their doors to customers and began solely feeding people in need during a time when so many people were struggling. Caitlin and the Tandem community fed over 115,000 people during the first year of the pandemic. Absolutely incredible. Watch and share In Tandem today on our website at onegirlrevolution.com.
I will be sure to put your website and all the social media links so people can easily get in touch with you and find all the links to donate, to go to your wish list, to get involved in your programs any way that they want. And just so they can look through all the different amazing stuff that you're doing that you have in your website, and the events, of course, that people could attend or share that information with other people that they know in Michigan. I really can't wait to see where you go from here, Rachelle. And I know there are so many things percolating, and I can't wait for the apartments because I believe that it's going to happen. I believe that it's just going to continue to grow. The work that you're doing is just so critical. I want to ask you, because I'm thinking about as we're talking here, I'm thinking about how we can emulate the work that you're doing. And to me, from my perspective, it's almost just, we can all just see people in our own community and not judge them for whatever's going on, whether they're wearing shorts in the winter or they are, having a meltdown at a event or in church or whatever. What would you say to people out there, to all of us? What can we do to emulate the work that you're doing and really just seeing people?
I love that part, what you just said. Just being kind to people and tolerant is huge. You don't know, and I was that person too, so I'm not going to pretend I wasn't before I got into this. And I was a special ed teacher, and I was still probably judging people, but you just don't know what someone else is going through. You're not walking through walking in their shoes. Just stop judging people and start thinking like, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, and if you can, if there's a way you can help them. So there's that piece, and I think modeling it for our kids too is a big one. I think we are coming a long ways. I mean, I remember when I was younger, the people who had special needs were in another building. So, that's not how it is anymore. And I think that's getting better, but definitely going out of our way to teach our kids to be kind to other people. If there's someone sitting alone, on the playground, to teach our kids to go up to that person and have a conversation with them or include them in things, right? Just makes us all better human beings. And it's full circle, because if you don't know someone with special need right now, you will. We will all have special needs as we get older, right? So whether you don't have it in your family or not, you have someone in your family that's a senior citizen that might need extra help. And that's kind of the same thing. It's more acceptable, but we all want our loved ones to be taken care of and be treated well. So I would say that's the biggest thing.
We can all do something. And I love what you talked about just with our children, that we can teach children to just be loving and compassionate and reach out to other kids who are just sitting on the playground. There are little things like that we can really make an impact.
Exactly. And, when you're inviting people to birthday parties, help your child think about how would you feel if you weren't invited to that party, because that happens. I mean, and get rid of that whole thing where gym teachers would, divide, the class in half and then go, okay, everyone pick who they want on their team. And there's always that one or two people at the end that's not being picked. That is horrifying for those kids, because they know they're going to be last picked. I mean, it's humiliating, and we need to get rid of stuff like that.
I completely agree. Rachelle, I am just so blown away by your story and by the incredible work that you're doing. And I know that it has not been easy. You've had some really difficult moments where you felt alone and isolated. You talked about pushing the rock up the hill, and then finally, all of a sudden, different people heard about what you were doing and got involved. I want to know if you could get to the very root of why you do what you do, the driving force on those really difficult days, or the days where you feel like, am I even making an impact? Because I'm sure there are days like that. Now you have so many stories of people that have been helped by your work and continue to be helped every single day. But if you could get to the very root of why you do what you do every single day, why you're so passionate about the Living and Learning Center, what would you say that root is?
I would say my boys. I mean, I definitely, we've helped so many people now, but that was the root. I mean, I kept thinking, if I die, I would see a homeless person on the street and I would wonder if they have autism, and the thought of that being my son one day. And the other piece is I didn't want to put it on my other kids. I want them to have, I didn't want them to resent him. And I didn't want them to be in a situation where, I left this huge burden on them. So, it's my kids. It's what every parent feels. It's that love you have for your children, and you'll do anything to make their lives better.
Rachelle, you are such an amazing woman, and I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. And you are a One Girl Revolution, so that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. But I'm curious, who is a One Girl Revolution in your life? Who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
There's been several. There's not just been one person. My Aunt Sandy was an amazing person, the most compassionate person. And I remember when we were little, even her just saying things or making me look at things differently. My Nana, my grandmother, she was my step grandma, but just loved me. And I felt that love. I never thought of her as a step grandmother. So I've had a few good people. I've had stepmoms that have been incredible to me. And again, they didn't have to be. I wasn't their child, but never gave up on me, and kept in touch with me and made sure I was okay, and just loved me unconditionally. And that feeling of being loved no matter what, it really resonates, and it drives you. I mean, we all need that. We all need to feel loved and wanted. And so I guess I try to do that a lot too. I try to really, the people that are in my life, especially these young adults, look at them that way and try to love them that way. And if I can, especially with people that are, some people aren't as easy as other people to love unconditionally, I can help them. So I guess I'm doing my piece, as I was saying earlier. If you have a skill set, I have a special ed degree, but more than that, I'm a hard worker. That's what got me through this. And the belief that this would happen if I did not give up, and just pushing through it.
Rachelle, you are so amazing. So is the Living and Learning Center. And I can't wait to continue to stay in touch with you. Like I said before, you're now a part of the One Girl Revolution family. And I can't wait to continue to follow everything you're doing and support it. I'll encourage everybody to check out your website. Like I said, I'll put it in the show notes. Follow you on social media. I always say the free and easy way to support anyone who's on this podcast is just to follow on social media and share. And you never know who might need to be connected to the Living and Learning Center. So just by sharing, we can make a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you know someone that's struggling, that has a special need, or their parents are looking for resources, I'm a great resource. Even if I can't help you or my services don't work for you, I know other people, and I want to be that for people.
Well, you are that, and our world needs everything that you're doing and all the other people that are involved in the Living and Learning Center. But before I let you go, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Don't give up. Just keep going. And that there's going to be moments that it's not fun or exciting or sexy looking. It's the grind. Just keep going.
Well, you are such an example of that. And Rachelle, I'm just so grateful to know you and get to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me out here.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.